How good are you at your word? I want to go over some things that I've found to be in these days very important because people are not good at their word. For instance, a father will say to his son, "Son, if you'll get all your stuff together, I'll take you fishing this weekend." He said, "Promise, Dad?" "I promise." Saturday comes around, big client comes into town. "Hey, let's go play golf." "Well, I'm supposed to go fish with my son, but he'll be okay with that." And he goes play golf. Mom wants to take the daughter out to go buy a prom dress. "I promise I'll go take you." But something comes up and she goes out and plays bridge with her friends. "I promise I'll get to you next time," they say. Well, people make vows, they make promises, they say things that they can't keep or won't keep because of extenuating circumstances. We make vows to God. Oh man, there's a big one. And we're going to see before the end of this how important those vows are. We want to keep our vows to God. Do you know we've made so many vows that people no longer believe our words, so they want to put it on paper, so we make contracts. Do you know people still break contracts? Yes, they do. I've had a lot of rent properties in times past, and I'd make contracts, and guess what? Those contracts weren't worth the paper they were printed on, nor were their signatures. If people wants to break that contract, they just leave you high and dry and go somewhere and you never find out where they are. You'll never recoup that money. I don't know how people stay in business renting property. I really don't. Anyway, you just got to keep it moving. I got to where, look, if you'll give me your word, I did better with that. Now, I'm not going to say that you should do that because there's a lot of people very successful by writing contracts and they know how to do it. My Uncle Billy was one, Billy Henry. He told this man he had a piece of real estate that was on the lake and that he would sell it to him. Man came, looked at it, and he said, "Well, I'll give you so-and-so for it." And Uncle Billy said, "Okay, but I can't sell it right now." He said, "Okay." So 5 years later, my Uncle Billy decides, "Okay, I want to sell it now." And the man comes back and he said, "Do you still do a right of first refusal?" And Uncle Billy said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, how much you want for it now?" He said, "I'm going to offer it to you for the same price I told you I would offer it to you back then, and you can have it for that price." He said, "But it's 5 years later." And Uncle Billy said, "I gave you my word." He's one of the few people I ever knew that would keep his word. All right, that's a big deal to me. That made an impression on me. How good are we with our offerings? I've had people give me things in the church. Let's say a lawnmower. I had one man, Brother Bob. Brother Bob gave a lawnmower to the church. It was used, and he was going to buy a new one. And he looked at it and he said, "You know what? That's not good enough to give. I'm going to go fix it up." So he made it like new and gave it. And it was like the best mower we ever had. Well, somebody else comes along and they said, "Look, I want to give a car to the church." So they gave a car. Guess what? It didn't run. It had problems. It cost more than it was worth. And I just literally had to junk it. That was a terrible offering. God's the same way. Do not make a vow to God to give him something that is torn or beat up or cut or blemished. They would bring sheep. God would want the best. So you had to give the best. God was upset when people gave less than what they should give. Remember the story of Japheth in the book of Judges, I believe, when he said, Father, if you will give me victory over the Ammonites, I will sacrifice the first thing that comes out of my house when I come back. Well, he got victory over the Ammonites. He come back, and his beautiful daughter comes rushing out there dancing and happy about him winning that war. And he was grieved in his heart. Well, guess what? He had made a vow. So the little daughter bewailed her virginity for a period of time, and she came back and said, "Dad, I'll never marry." So that was the offering. He didn't have to kill her, but she could not have any children, couldn't marry. She remained a virgin and a spinster to the end of her days because her father made a vow. If you make a vow, here's what I'm going to tell you. I've been there, done this. I can't tell you how many times I'd make a vow to God. Inevitably, what's going to happen is this. Something's going to happen. Some circumstance is going to come up that you can or don't want to fulfill that vow. I mean, every single time. So I vowed to God one time, said, Lord, I'll tell you what, if you'll do so-and-so for me, I'll give you $1,000 and I'll put it anywhere you want. Well, man, it happened so fast, I couldn't believe it. And I went, oh, well, God didn't have anything to do with that. But the truth of the matter, it was God. And I said, you know, I really need that $1,000. And then I got to thinking about the vow. I said, oh, no, man, I do need that $1,000. But I'll tell you what, I better give it because I don't want to get in trouble with God. I don't want to have something happen to me that could happen to people all the time. In Ecclesiastes chapter 5, I'm going to read this passage of scripture to you. You need to write this down. You need to remember this because vows are still important today. People make vows in marriages. I'll be married to you for the rest of my life. Guess what? They're not. We got 50, 75%, 90% divorces with people that are first, second, and third marriages. That's the percentages. They can't keep a vow. It's better not to vow than it is to vow not keep your vow. Okay, Ecclesiastes 5. Keep your foot when you go to the house of God and be ready to hear than to give the sacrifice for fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with your mouth, and let not your heart be hasty to utter anything before God, for God is in heaven and you upon earth. Let your words be few. When you vow to God, defer not to pay it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay that which you have vowed. He calls people fools that vow vows and don't pay the vow. Better it is that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. Now listen to this next one. This is it. Ecclesiastes 5:6. Suffer not your mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. Neither say thou before the angel that it was an error, making excuses. Wherefore should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? So having said that, learn to be somebody that if you make a promise, if you make a vow, that you keep your promise and keep your vow. Don't show yourself to be a fool to God or to anybody else. Give good gifts. Give good offerings. When you vow a vow, keep your vow. Otherwise, don't vow. Don't make promises. You got a son, I'll take you fishing one day, but I can't this weekend. Or when it's convenient, just don't make a vow. Don't make a promise. Don't let your son think you're a liar. Same way with moms. Don't tell your daughter something that you can't keep because they will think you're liars. Consequently, they will think that God, who has made promises, is also a liar because y'all are the authority of God in the earth under God. That's very important. So when you make a vow, especially to God, keep your vow. Otherwise, don't vow at all. Love you guys. Bye. And go in peace.